Welcome to the show. Tonight, an outrageous story that happened back in August. Back in August, let me ask you this question. What would you do, as a student, what would you do if your teacher plays video games? What would you do? Your teacher plays Fortnite, and all of a sudden they find your Xbox or PlayStation account saying so and so, they find out who you are. What would you do? Would you let them play with you? Or would you ignore it? But if you play it, if you let them play with you online, what would you do? What would happen next? Exactly what happened back in August when this teacher was sentenced to 60 days, not 40 some years, 60 days in jail and 10 years probation. Her name was Marka Bonding, the former teacher who's only going to serve 60 days and 10 years in prison. For years, it's been sexual assault. It's all years. So why did they decide, you know what? Let's put her on. Let's put him in jail for 60 days and then put her on probation. This happened in Texas. Take a look.
Tomball teacher befriends a student by playing Fortnite with him before sexually assaulting him for years.
A judge sentenced Marka Bodine to 60 days in jail and 10 years probation today. The DA's office is furious because they wanted her in jail for 40 years.
And all new tonight at 10, ABC 13's Brianna Connor is digging into this unusually and surprising light sentence. Brianna, makes sense of all of this for us.
Several people out there really shocked about this. I did speak with a couple experts tonight. No one is excusing this illegal and predatory behavior, but I'm told there were several things that went into Judge George Glass's decision on a sentence intended to provide justice for the victim and discourage this former teacher from doing anything like this ever again.
I asked for a minimum of 20.
A Harris County prosecutor pushed for Marka Bodine to receive at least 2 decades in jail as punishment for a predatory and sexual relationship she engaged in with a student when she worked at Tomball Intermediate School. During the hearing, the court heard from the victim, his parent, and Bodine's doctor.
I think no small part of an explanation for this sentence may lie in any psychological information they provided to the court.
Criminal defense attorney Christopher Downey says the judge had to take that testimony into account, along with how likely she is to reoffend. Other societal factors may have also been at play.
By all accounts, this is an unusual outcome. And I'm sure that the gender of the person on trial, the fact that this was a woman accused of having sex with a young boy, that's going to factor into it as well.
A clinical psychologist who works with victims of abuse says typically no punishment is ever enough.
Many people believe that once they hear the sentence, they're going to be relieved or they're going to feel justified. And then most often they are let down because they just don't feel like enough was done.
Bodine used video games and texting to lure in her 13-year-old victim before trading explicit pictures and videos. Court documents show that eventually led to rape over a 3-year period. For those crimes, she will spend 10 years on probation, register as a sex offender, receive therapy, and spend 60 days at some point in jail.
The perpetrators that are the smartest and the most successful look like you and me. They don't look like a stranger in the bushes or what we're brought up to believe. They look like someone that we would trust, which is why we do trust them.
In Houston, I'm Brianna Connor, ABC 13 Eyewitness News.
Okay. Common sense alert. Sexually assaulting a teen, that is statutory rape. In any of the 50 states, you're in Texas, Florida, Idaho, California, wherever you live, any of the 50 states, that's statutory rape. You heard Dr. Phil say it many times on his show. You're going to hear this now. That's statutory rape. In common law jurisdiction, statutory rape is non-forcible sexual activity in which one of the individuals is below the age of consent. I mean, you look at age of consent in the state of Texas. The age of consent in the state of Texas is 17 years old. That's common sense for you. Now, had that person been under, now that person's under 17. So, what does that tell you? Statutory rape. There's your common sense right there. A 13-year-old. 4 more years and he wouldn't have had that consent. But this is just the beginning of these teacher-student sex scandals that happen. Somebody sleeps with the teacher. I mean, if an older person slept with a teacher, nothing would happen. Nobody would learn from the Den Mother fiasco. But if a teacher sleeps with a student, that's statutory rape in any of the 50 states. That's why we have laws of age of consent. The age of consent is Texas 17. This means it is generally legal for a person to have sex with someone who is at least 17 years old as long as both parties are willing and consensual. So there's your common sense right there from this. But 60 days in jail? I'm happy with probation, but she needs to be jailed for life. Not sentenced to 60 days and 10 years on probation. Probation's okay, but probation may be okay. Coming up next, 911 calls when seconds count. Look at some cases about these 911 calls, how long they take after we heard about what happened on yesterday's show. Stay with us. Yesterday, we told you about one woman here in Robstown who called 911 when she was just 5 minutes away from the police station. Remember, she wasn't in the jurisdiction of Robstown, which was the line being crossed when people were robbed in. But the police were confused. And I'd be surprised if something else happens. Now imagine this. You're in terrible danger and your only lifeline is 911. But what if you realized that sometimes 911 takes too long or they get sent to the wrong address? Tonight, we're going to show you some examples of when seconds count whenever you call 911 and whenever people go to the wrong location or someone's too late, they died. Can anything be done when seconds count? Here's Chris Wallace.
What is your emergency?
When the 911 safety net breaks, everything can fall apart.
911 is an emergency.
In Boca Raton, Florida, 14-month-old Brooke Hauser is found floating face down in her backyard pool.
We just got her. What can we do? All you can do is wait for rescue. They'll be there real shortly.
But while the ambulance is on the way, the 911 dispatcher doesn't know how to give CPR instructions. The little girl suffers severe brain damage and later dies. In Kentucky, Lillian Coleman and 3 of her children die when their house catches fire. A dispatcher initially sends fire trucks miles away to the wrong town.
Unfortunately, the public misunderstands what 911 is.
Jeffrey Clausen, who has trained dispatchers in major cities around the country, says if competent people aren't answering the calls, 911 is just a phone number.
That's all it means. It doesn't mean that the people that are there know what to do. It doesn't mean that they're trained. They can be abject idiots.
Fire rescue, do you have an emergency?
Since 1968, when the first 911 call was made in Haleyville, Alabama, the system has saved thousands of lives.
Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, bye-bye. Well, that guy's an idiot.
But as you'll see tonight, sometimes the system breaks down. And it starts with the human factor, the 911 dispatcher.
Okay.
Last year, Chicago's Better Government Association took these videos of the 911 night shift. Inside the police nerve center, 4 dispatchers dozing in dreamland. And that wasn't all. The camera found 6 more dispatchers sleeping in another 911 area that handles lower priority calls. In cities such as Houston and Atlanta, more than 95% of emergency calls are answered within 10 seconds. What you're seeing here may be one reason why in Chicago only 62% of calls are handled that fast. When these pictures were broadcast by WMAQ, it was big news. The city council held a public hearing chaired by Alderman William Beaver, who demanded that 10 sleeping operators be disciplined.
Somebody's beating your behind and you need some help in a hurry, and he's asleep.
But that was more than 6 months ago. And guess what's happened since? How many of those 10 operators have been disciplined?
Not one yet.
Not one?
Not one.
How do you explain that?
I can't explain it. All I have to do is wait for the police department. What they say is they're still investigating.
I didn't like it. You know, what we're seeing on the tape.
Police Commander Jerry Robinson was put in charge of Chicago's 911 center after the controversy broke. He says it won't happen again, but that union work rules have slowed the disciplinary process. Commander, it's been more than 6 months since that tape came out.
Yes.
What kind of a message do you think it sends? No action has been taken against any of these officers.
It may not be a good message to be sent, but we have to give them every right that they're afforded.
But the most disturbing part of this undercover tape is not the sleeping dispatchers. It's that small light near the top of the screen. A warning that a 911 call has gone unanswered for at least 36 seconds. At least 8 phone rings. Last year, that warning light flashed at Chicago's 911 center more than 61,000 times.
I wouldn't call to 911 again.
Veronica Dale believes her husband was a victim of Chicago's 911 system. Reverend Eric Dale was a 69-year-old minister who served Chicago's Jamaican community. Until one day in 1993, when he collapsed at home with a heart attack at about 2:30 in the afternoon. Family members recall trying to reach 911 again and again.
They didn't respond. Nobody picked up the phone.
They're calling 911 and nobody is answering.
Nobody answering the phone.
Primetime has obtained this internal police record showing that 1,334 times that day, people dialed 911 but hung up before the call was answered. That's 30% more than usual. At 2:49, more than 10 minutes after they say they started calling 911, Reverend Dale's granddaughter finally gets through.
Oh, I need the outlet. Because my father's got a heart attack and he's dying. They're on their way, ma'am.
But records show no ambulance is dispatched. Dale's condition is worsening. At 2:52, another call is made.
My grandfather had a heart attack. I need somebody right away. What is this at, sir? 38 West 108 Place. Hurry up. He don't got no pulse or nothing. All right, I'll be there. Watch for the ambulance, okay?
But again, no ambulance is sent. As each minute slips away, so does Reverend Dale's chance for survival. At 2:54, his daughter reaches for the 911 lifeline one last time.
My father just had a heart attack. And he's not moving. All right, I'll be there shortly. Hurry up.
Still, despite all those promises from 911 operators, an ambulance isn't dispatched until after that last call is made. Almost a half hour after the Reverend collapsed in his bedroom. Eric Dale dies as a result of his heart attack. But it wasn't just the delay in sending out paramedics that went wrong that day. In Chicago, while you're waiting for the ambulance, you're supposed to get help over the phone. The fire department gives dispatchers these flip cards, which tell them what to do in an emergency, what questions to ask, and what pre-arrival instructions to give while the paramedics are on their way.
You can, in fact, make a difference for the patient.
Mike Cosgrove, a Chicago Fire Department official, says the first thing a dispatcher must do is ask questions, such as, in the case of a heart attack,
how do you know he's having a heart attack? What's happening? What happened to him? Is he on the floor? Where is he?
Right. A lot of questions that you'd like to ask.
Few questions, certainly.
What if I told you that there are cases of your dispatchers not asking one of those questions?
I would be very surprised.
So we played the call that Reverend Dale's grandson made to 911.
Hurry up. He don't got no pulse or nothing. Right, hon, is this a house or an apartment? A house. All right, well, there's somebody over there, okay?
Why wouldn't you give pre-arrival instructions in that case?
My guess would be that an attempt should have been made.
Mrs. Dale believes those instructions would have saved her husband's life. He'd still be alive today.
He would still be alive, yes.
We wanted to see if the Dale case was the exception, the Chicago fire officials claim, or the rule. So we conducted our own experiment. And what we found should trouble anyone who's counting on 911 to protect them. Over 4 days in January, we tracked medical emergencies in Chicago to see if 911 operators were giving out pre-arrival instructions.
How many of these pills did you take?
In one case, a report of an allergic reaction to medication, everything went by the book.
They stayed online with me and made sure everything was okay until they got here.
But as we followed more cases, from heart attacks to babies with seizures, almost no one said they'd gotten medical help over the phone.
They just told me that the ambulance would be there in a few minutes.
It's a pattern we saw over and over.
No, I don't know anything about CPR. Didn't nobody give me no directions.
They didn't tell you nothing over the phone.
In 13 of the 15 cases we followed, no pre-arrival instructions were given. But when the Chicago Fire Department reviewed our cases, they had a different spin.
In all cases, the pre-arrival instruction, look for the ambulance, was given.
Other than saying, look for the ambulance, there was a cardiac emergency here. No pre-arrival instructions. There was a baby with a seizure. No pre-arrival instructions.
Mm-hmm.
How do you explain that?
I can't explain.
They just didn't care.
I mean, you're saying that about
saying
dispatchers here in the city of Chicago.
They just didn't care about giving pre-arrival instructions.
Too much trouble.
Too much trouble. It's easier to get them off the phone.
Did he appear to have any kind of weapons or anything like that in his hands?
But problems go beyond individual operators to bigger issues of just how well a community has set up its 911 system. Some places do it right. Dispatchers in Delaware County, Pennsylvania are drilled in simulations, testing their responses.
I want him out of my house right now.
Is he there now?
Yeah, he's here right now.
Do you have any weapons? Does he have any weapons?
He ain't got no weapons, but I might have a weapon.
Training is so rigorous that 2 out of 3 applicants drop out. But while Delaware County trains dispatchers for at least 6 months, across the river in Philadelphia, until recently, 911 operators got only 2 weeks of training. And as we'll show you, that lack of training left dispatchers there ill-equipped late last year to handle a life-and-death crisis.
It was a baptism by fire.
That's how Nicole Burton describes her training to be a Philadelphia police dispatcher. 1 week in a classroom, 1 more at the 911 center, watching dispatchers take calls. So 2 weeks in, you're on the job.
Right.
You make it sound like you don't think that was enough training.
You're trusting somebody to save lives, and, you need more.
2 years ago, a citizens group warned that more training was needed because dispatchers were often rude and abrasive, and some 911 calls were being ignored. All the 911 problems came to a head one night last November, when a gang of teenagers started roaming through northeast Philadelphia. Bill Donnelly was working late.
When I see a gang of kids busting up with baseball bats, windows of the cars behind us here, and the way they were going at it, I knew someone was going to get seriously hurt.
He called 911.
Could you send some police over here? About 50 kids are busting up cars. Teenagers? Yep. All right. Wait for it here. You got it damn right.
Over 40 minutes, there were 18 calls about the roving mob. But they fell through another crack in Philadelphia's 911 system. The calls were taken by 11 different dispatchers. No one put together that they were all describing the same near riot in one small neighborhood. In fact, some dispatchers were rude to callers.
All right. Was that it? No, that's it. Send the police car and say, wait a minute. I have the information. You can hang up now.
Eventually, on the steps of this church, the gang turned on a 16-year-old high school senior named Eddie Pollock. 5 minutes before he was fatally beaten, this call came into 911.
Police 244. There seems to be a lot of gang fighting out front of my house. A lot of screaming, yelling, kids are carrying it. It looks like clubs of some kind.
But the 911 operator gave the call a low priority, just above a complaint of loud music. No police were sent. Who was that 911 operator? Nicole Burton.
Was there anything else different that I could have done? I know the answer in my case is no.
Your conscience is clear.
It is.
Burton says the noisy 911 room and a bad headset kept her from hearing the word clubs. So she gave the call priority 3, a fight on a highway. This caller says a lot to you. Gangs fighting in the street, screaming, yelling. I mean, it seems to me there are all kinds of questions that would have come from that phone call, and you didn't ask any of them.
It doesn't matter if it's 2 people or 3,000 people. If all you say is that they're fighting, it is still considered a fight on the
But
highway.
Ms. Burton, it does matter whether it's 2 people or 3,000.
I would agree with you, common sense, yes. But the policy of the Philadelphia Police Department did not agree.
Burton says the practice in the 911 center was not to ask questions, because that only encouraged callers to exaggerate their situation. The city denies that, but acknowledges the night Eddie Pollock was killed, few questions were asked. After the tragic killing, the city increased training from 2 weeks to 6. 3 dispatchers were fired for rudeness, and 3, including Nicole Burton, were transferred out. But all that came too late for Eddie Pollock's father, who remembers all the warnings about Philadelphia's emergency system.
What we're facing right now is the fact that the city knew that the 911 system was ineffective before Eddie was murdered.
911 is a lifeline, but one you can't always count on. Whether it's a little girl in Florida, a minister in Chicago, or a teenager in Philadelphia, when the dispatcher says help is on the way, is it really?
So doesn't common sense tell you to listen to the questions about learn how to do CPR? Yes. Common sense needs to be put out there for these people operating the 911 system. If you do not know how to be trained, you need to be asked to be retrained again. 2 weeks, it's not enough. There needs to be more weeks happening. And if you got like a crash course, if you've been not trained enough, you need to leave right away and explain to them, you're not giving me enough training. You gotta train me more or I'm out of here. Threaten it. That way they'll know. Show them this story. That way they'll know. Common sense does not make sense enough. I mean, this woman, that woman right there, she was transferred out. A lot of people have not been disciplined. If you're operating the 911 system, do not fall asleep. You need to be awake at all times. Do not have any coffee around because you have liquid in there with all the computer type stuff. Electrocution can happen. You pour some water on the keyboard, it gets real sticky. Basic rule in computer labs at your school is do not have any food or drinks because crumbs can stick into there. That's common sense. When we come back, a tunnel that leads from Arizona to Mexico. John Quinones with a guy to take the tunnel to the sewers from Arizona to Mexico. I mean Mexico to Arizona. Stay with us. I want to bring you up to date now in Oxford. You know, it's been about 1 year since that school shooting. Now new developments are happening. Progress toward the Oxford school shooting probe. A third-party firm charged with publishing the first public report on the 2021 Oxford school shooting attack said it received critical information on the shooting from the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office, including the information that has never been revealed to the public. The executive vice president at Guidepost Solutions told the Oxford School Board during the monthly meeting that prosecutors have provided Guideposts with significant detailed information relating to the incident. That information is critical to the review, and some portions of that information are still non-public. As a condition of receiving that information, Disick said Guideposts agreed that it would not divulge any non-public information until the Oakland County Prosecutor Karen McDonald determined such a disclosure would not impact the May 1st pre-sentencing hearing for Ethan Crumley on the upcoming criminal trial of his parents. Yet Crumley pleaded guilty and the deaths. He remains in the jail until his hearing, which will take place before the sentencing of a juvenile without parole. Guidepost conducting 2 reports. The first will detail what Oxford Community Schools has done in place for school security and threat assessment practices, whether there are gaps in its plan, and recommendations for improvements. It is expected in more than 2 or 3 weeks. They told the board. They will host a community forum to answer questions about its first report to the Oxford community and the public. The date and format will be determined, but most likely in May. The second report is the full accounting of what happened leading up to, on, and after that shooting. It will be released after consulting with prosecutors and discussing with the prosecutors. Both reports will be released to the board at the same time they are released to the public, and both will include recommendations. But here's what we know. Here's what we don't. Here's what we now know. January 27th, the Guidepost announced it's encountered extraordinary interference in the third-party investigation. Officials declined to comment on the source of interference, but the complaint came months after educators and administrators in Oxford Community Schools were advised not to participate in interviews with the investigation. During the winter months, Guidepost experienced more than voluntary cooperation from school administrators and employees, including those represented by council, but several current and former school employees who are critical witnesses have declined to participate. Most are advised to the district's council. Most of the victims and victims' families have met with Guidepost. Disick says with final interview requests remain attorneys with the victims and their families. So now what we know so far is that the school's been sued, the superintendent left, and more needs to get done here. When you're dealing, if you're coming forward saying, oh yeah, this and that, then what really needs to happen here is that stuff needs to get done in order to prevent this from happening again. So, we'll keep you posted what's going on. Coming next, a tunnel that leads from Mexico to Arizona. John Quinones takes that tunnel with one person who has been in that tunnel and police who say they are terrified of the gangs. Stay with us. Take a look at this map. This is Mexico, and this is Arizona. That's Nogales, Arizona, and that's Mexico. Here's a question for you. Can you ever imagine Mexicans crossing the border without getting caught and getting away with it? It's exactly what happened in this particular case. As you can see, they take a tunnel. This tunnel right here, this red line that I'm pointing, that tunnel goes to Nogales, Mexico, to Nogales, Arizona. Because they avoid those border patrols. And lines are being crossed to go across America. But can anything be done about this dangerous passage? You're about to meet someone who has been in the tunnel and will guide us through that tunnel. And you also see the gangs that the police are afraid of. And people who say that more needs to get done. Here's John Quinones.
They call this land Sonora, an expansive desert that stretches like a moonscape from northern Mexico into southern Arizona. It's so quiet, so desolate here, you would never believe what lurks just beneath this baked earth. Below the desert, in a dark and murky drainage tunnel, a massive smuggling operation is underway. The trafficking in human cargo.
How many people come through here every day? ¿Cuánta gente pasa?
Diario, on a daily basis, 500 or 600 people come through here.
500 or 600?
Yes, and on Fridays and Saturdays, thousands come through.
His name is Adrian, one of dozens of smugglers who charges immigrants $20 to guide them illegally through this underground railroad, the quickest, easiest passage to the U.S. It's 20 feet wide, 11 feet high, and it stretches for about a mile from Nogales, Mexico to Nogales, Arizona. With Adrian as our navigator, we enter on the Mexican side of the tunnel, and we venture deep within this subterranean passageway, down its maze of narrow arteries, a journey unlike any I've ever taken.
How old are the people you bring across? ¿De qué edad incluso?
All ages, women with children. We even cross little old ladies sometimes.
As we head deeper into the tunnel, Adrian leads us into a smaller concrete pipe about 2.5 feet wide.
This tunnel comes out to Nogales, Arizona.
Half an hour into our journey, we surface right under the streets of the United States. To Adrian's surprise, the exit is welded shut with bars, but he says it's no problem.
Don't worry, there are easier ways to get out of here.
Sure enough, another half hour later, we see gaping daylight, the end of the tunnel, where America is just a short hop away. No visa or passport required. Many of these people have planned this trip for years. They carry their life savings, and that makes them easy prey for bands of young thieves who control this shadowy underworld. They're known as tunnel rats, Mexican gang members like Pachuco, Sony, Samurai, and their leader, Santana. They call themselves Barrio Libre, Free Ghetto. We come face to face with them as we exit the tunnel. They're angry and aggressive. This tunnel is our home, they warn us. You have no right to be here. They all carry cans of soda, but quickly we learn this is no soft drink. The cans contain glue and aluminum paint. The boys inhale the toxic fumes all day long for a euphoric high.
I like the paint. It's my life. And if I'm gonna die, I want to die high.
In their drunken stupor, they threaten to break our cameras, challenge us with ice picks, rocks, weapons that are frequently used. Just take a look at this police surveillance video. Gang members assaulting and robbing a group of Mexican immigrants. Who are these young thugs, and why are they running wild on our border? As night falls on Nogales and the gang's intoxication wears off, we convince Santana to give us a tour of his world beneath the desert.
You say this is your home. This is tu casa. Yeah. It's your house.
And as we're about to discover, the gang has an unusual way of protecting their home. Bats, hundreds of them live inside the tunnel. Santana claims he can communicate with them. He has them trained, he says, to attack on command.
It's a hiding place.
Further inside, Santana shows us a secret compartment, complete with its own door. Inside the long and winding sewer pipe, dozens of people can hide out. Santana and his friends spend their days and nights living just inches away from this river of waste.
Isn't this water contaminated?
No, we wash our clothes here. We even bathe here. And look, we've never gotten any infections, no sores, no nothing.
At midnight, half a mile into the tunnel, we find the rest of his gang.
This is where you sleep. Aquí duermen?
All of them teenagers. Some say they've run away from abusive families. Others, like Mato, are orphans.
I have lived in this tunnel for 7 years.
7 years? You've been here 7 years? How long will you stay?
for the rest of my life. I have nowhere else to go.
The tunnel is so dark and forbidding that neither Mexican nor American police will venture down here. They're afraid of the gangs that control this underground world, afraid of the diseases that fester here, like cholera, hepatitis, tuberculosis. All of that disease and crime flows right out of this tunnel and into the heart of Nogales, Arizona. The people who live here say they're defenseless in the face of the danger that lurks right beneath them.
They live however they want. Nobody tells them what to do. There are no rules. They make up the rules.
Delia Suarez and Susan Haddock say the gangs have intimidated the entire neighborhood.
They look like they're drunk or on drugs, and some of them, you look them in the face, you can see their eyes aren't focused. How do you protect yourself? Do you buy pepper spray and mace?
There are all kinds of attacks, robberies, fights.
County officials in Nogales are also worried. They've spent months trying to come up with a way to block the tunnel to human traffic, yet still allow the flow of sewage and floodwater. It's a response to the concerns of both residents and business people.
They have hurt people, they stab people, they mug people, and they never felt bad about it at all.
Susan Valdez manages this fast food restaurant just above the tunnel. She says the gangs have attacked her employees, demanding free food. How would you describe these kids?
Vandals, criminals, extortion.
The people who call us that have never suffered. They've never been hungry. They've never slept like this in a tunnel.
Why did you cry the last time you cried down here?
I cry when I remember my childhood. When my mother would take care of me. She was really gentle.
I feel sorry for the society that has created this kid.
Teresa Leal is a community activist on the Mexican side of the border.
These tunnel rats are victims.
They're not all criminals, you're saying?
No way, no way. First of all, they're victims. They're just lashing out.
Leal, who works in the shanty towns of Nogales, Mexico, says the boys from the tunnel have been abandoned by their families. Part of the problem, she says, is the industrialization of the border, triggered by NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, and its predecessor, the Maquiladora program. Both brought big foreign factories to this area. The plants have provided thousands of jobs, but the salaries are so low that in most families, both parents have to work. In a region with few schools and virtually no daycare, the new factories have produced a whole generation of vagrant children.
Their mothers have left to go and work, and the kids are hitting the streets.
Many of them wind up in the tunnel, where there's no shortage of immigrants to prey upon. While the U.S. Border Patrol is holding the line in a well-publicized stand against undocumented workers in California and Texas, states like Arizona, with little political clout in Washington, are left with a meager force to control the border.
You can see a few just ran across right there.
Steve McDonald is one of only a dozen or so immigration agents who patrol 31 miles of the border at any given time. It's no wonder the U.S.-Mexican boundary is riddled with holes. The word is out in Mexico. If you want easy access to the U.S., Nogales is the place to cross. Last month alone, it's estimated 60,000 people slipped through this border illegally. Many of them cut through the tunnel and then jump on American freight trains bound for Tucson and points beyond, like 20-year-old Jose, who invited us to join him on this northbound train. A few miles outside of Nogales, he shows us how he scales the sides of boxcars to move from one container to the next. And then he climbs perilously close to the train's grinding wheels, showing us where he hides from train officials and the Border Patrol.
Is this worth the risk? If I find a job in the U.S., then yes, it'll be worth the risk.
But too often, the young men who ride these rails find themselves down and out, far away from home. Like 15-year-old Sergio, we find him on the railroad tracks in Tucson, his face buried in a soda can.
I inhale this, and I close my eyes.
I feel like the earth is moving.
How long does this high last? ¿Cuánto dura? Just a little while.
I wish it would last longer, but it costs too much.
It's aluminum thing. Why do you do this? ¿Por qué lo haces?
Because no one will give me a job. I get bored and angry.
It's sort of like an international homeless population, but of very young people.
Leonel Castillo is the former commissioner of the U.S. Immigration Service.
They'll become dependent in some way, whether it's in this country or that country. There'll be people that are dependent.
The solution, he says, is the creation of well-paying jobs along the border by both Mexico and the U.S.
Our two countries are so completely linked that whatever we do affects them and whatever they do affects us.
So far, the only government response to the kids' flight has come from city officials in Nogales. This week, under heavy security, workers installed a massive gate on the American side of the tunnel. A gate ironically made from railroad tracks, and the same rails used by the boys to enter the U.S. will now be used to keep them out. Several of the gang members were detained and deported, but all of them have vowed a return to the tunnel.
This is where we live, our home. The day they put up the first bars, we will take them down. We will never allow that to happen.
We left the boys of Barrio Libre in the early morning hours. Their final words: consider this your home. If you ever find yourself homeless, you're welcome back.
Okay. So where's the common sense in all this? Well, you see that bar. So, you know what? I'm going to play you an example here. If you don't know the Return of the Borrowers, from back in 1993, then the clip I'm about to show you will be an example. Then this would be a great example. Let's take a look. Think of this. Let's think of this. Okay, let's say that the grate to the bottom of the drain is the steel iron that barred that tunnel. And these two found out that you told about our tunnel? Well, here we go now. Ditchley and what's his name would be the border patrols. Thinking, oh, you gonna take our bars? Well,
time for the Koch family.
Those two be Border Patrols. And the four borrowers would be those immigrants. No offense, but this is an example. Like that. Like that. Does that ring a bell? If it did, I hope it did. We'll be right back. Final break time. Imagine as a parent, you're frustrated with your kid because he didn't get good grades. You're saying, okay, son, bring this grade up. If you don't bring this grade up, I'm going to make you destroy your Xbox. Okay. Then he doesn't get his grade up. He doesn't get his grade up. He plays his Xbox. You say, I told you to raise that grade up. You didn't. Then imagine as a parent, you videotape the incident. It's exactly what happened years ago when the son fails his classes. The father decides to take matters in his own hands while videotaping. He forces his son to destroy his video game consoles. What happens next would leave any parent stunned, with over 300,000 views on YouTube. When I watched this years ago from Tim Black, kind of outraged. And you will too. Take a look.
It's not my fault.
Let's go.
It's not my fault that I didn't get him.
Let's go.
It's not my fault that I didn't get him though.
Let's go. You got 3 weeks, Jason. Let's go.
It's not my fault. My
Too
teacher
bad.
didn't want to give it
Let's
me.
go.
It's not my fault.
Now. Let's go. Let's go. Next one. Let's go, next one. Let's go.
No.
Excuse you? Pick up the fucking sledgehammer and smash it.
But it's not my fault.
Now.
It's not my fault.
Okay,
It's my teacher's fault.
let's go. Let's go, Jason.
I can't.
Do it. Do it or I do it. Do it or I'm gonna do it.
I can't.
Yeah, you can.
I can't.
Yep, you're gonna do it right now. Let's go.
I can't do it.
You're gonna do it right now, Jason. Let's go. I'm tired of waiting. Let's go, Jason. Pick up the fucking hammer and do it.
Now, after watching that, are you angry at what you saw? I bet you are after reading these comments and after hearing my words coming out of my mouth saying, common sense alert. First, let's read these comments. This has got to be one of the most ridiculous points I've ever seen in my entire life. A much better and smarter solution to do would be to just take away his gaming systems, encourage him to work harder and get high grades and scores, and then when he shows improvement, give him back his gaming systems. The father himself is forcing his son to smash his gaming, says it was absolutely unacceptable, uncalled for, and wasting money. There's your common sense. Also, a much better and smarter solution to do is to take away his Xbox consoles, encourage him to work harder and get good grades. And then when he shows improvement, give him back his Xbox, phosphorus himself. That's the same thing from Supersonic. He could have sold and gave the money to charity. Selling in is also bad. Just donate money, not the kids' Xbox One. If video games are gonna come before real life things, you don't need them. Mrs. replies, I'm not a parent, but I can't help but feel that locking the Xbox in the camera may have been a better first step than smashing it. Why doesn't his dad just lock his Xbox away and then give it back when he gets better grades? The father doesn't seem to understand just how much of a difficult and long process of getting grades back it really is. Grades can drop very easily, and if they do, getting them back up, depending on the teacher, can exceptionally be hard. It's almost never happens in 3 weeks. This is like punishment for a serious crime. If a kid gets bad grades, help kids study, not make them feel even more bad about their future. Because as you know, I'm going to be an uncle. And if my nephew failed his classes and he played his video games, I would not make him smash his Xbox. I take it away, put it under lock and key. That way, say, hey, I need you to get your grades up. Get your grades up. Work harder in school. And if you don't show me you can do that, I'm going to take away your Xbox. Common sense would tell you that. Why didn't the dad just take the console away for a few weeks? Congratulations, you wasted $500. He would never trust you again. Good job, Dad. This dad changed me of being a parent. This dad must face consequences. I would agree. This is the problem with school. Everyone is brainwashed thinking that life revolves around it. We live in a sad, sad world. This father needs to go to prison for emotional abuse. This traumatizing and cool. The kid deserves better parents. Yeah, years ago, he would have been sent to. He would have called CPS on it. He said, "My dad made me destroy my Xbox. I have videotape to prove it." And Dad would have been like, "Yeah, I made him destroy his Xbox. I want to go to foster care." They'd be like, "No, please, no, please, I'll be a better parent, I swear." Poor kid, hope he gets new parents. That dad committing the ultimate violation of honor code made this kid cry. If you're a parent, you need to be concerned about your son's grade. Me being an uncle, if my nephew or niece cared about school, I'd make sure that he get his grades up. I mean, when I was a kid, you got good grades in your report card, you would get money. Yeah, progress reports and report cards. If I was a kid, I would have picked up the damn hammer and smashed the camera. And finally, after the video, Jason put his hockey mask. Nah. And finally, it's also a waste of money. It could have been at least helped someone else by just selling the Xbox and donating the money to charity. Could have been better. But that's part of commando parenting. Tighten the nuts and bolts back. Begin stripping the room of everything. That's commando parenting. What's the common sense in all this? Take it away if the child does not improve. Actually, let me do this right here. If the child does not improve, if you feel like your child's not improving, take it away for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, a week. It doesn't matter. Just say, hey, I need you to bring up these grades and you show me you can do better in school. And if you do better in school, I'll give you your Xbox back. Until then, you did not show me you did good in school. For that, I'm going to take away your Xbox for a week. And by the end of the week, show me you're good, you'll get it back. That's what kids value most, is the video games. Coming up on Throwback Thursday on this channel. I know we do Throwback Thursdays on the GMB YouTube channel, but this time we're going to go backwards here because we're focusing on an issue called texting in class. We did it on the GMB YouTube channel when we did reruns we did some reruns, but I wanted to focus on this channel for Throwback Thursday. But our next Throwback Thursday, which is next week's Throwback Thursday, on the GMB YouTube channel, a look at fast food restaurants. We showed one from Primetime Live. We're going to show it to you again, along with one that I did not show. That's on the next week's Throwback Thursday. That's giving me a break for this Wednesday going to Thursday. We'll see you again on this channel for Throwback Thursday. For everyone here at YouTube, have a good night.